Hi. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Deb Pollack. I'm the founder of Drive Toward a Cure, and I want to welcome you all tonight. Thank you. To give you some quick background, for those who don't know, we're a national foundation that's been using the momentum of the automotive industry as a whole to raise funds for Parkinson's research and patient care throughout the country. And we've been supporting local and regional groups through the programs that we do, and we work with groups just like the Parkinson's Support Center for Northern Nevada. Did I get that right, Mindy? But before we start our show tonight, I want to give a special thank you to a few people. First of all, I want to thank Phil McDougall and his entire staff that have been so generous, so kind, for everything they've given us here tonight. I also want to introduce you to our mini but mighty Drive Toward a Cure team. They've traveled from California and Toronto, Canada to be with you tonight. A quick shout out to two of our key ambassadors, Derek Torrey and Vikas Chinnan, if you guys can raise your hands. They both not only represent us, but they represent the world of Parkinson's, because they're both challenged by young onset Parkinson's, and they've been with me for quite some time now. Since our beginnings in 2016, Derek was one of the first people who came on to help me support and start our program. I also want to thank my very lifelong friend and our event planner tonight, Carol Frimmer, who's in the back in red. And we couldn't have done it with without all our visuals and dynamic social media and things that have come out to share with everyone and get the word out. And that is my partner in cause, Mark Davidson, who is in the back. He's behind everything that we do. We've been together in one form or another for at least 20 years. But he's also got his own partner, who's our special friend, Samantha Kennedy, who comes out and helps us too. Most important, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight, because your support is living proof that no one has to go through Parkinson's alone. And it's a reminder that while we seek awareness everywhere we go, the funding certainly helps. And we hope you're getting involved in the silent auction tonight. It's going to go on till 8:30, and every dollar that's raised is going to support the 5,000 people in the High Sierra region that are living with Parkinson's. And that's all going to go through Mindy's group at the Parkinson's Support Center here in Northern Nevada. And speaking of some of the funds we're trying to raise, part of it is beginning with a very special car that we brought in that's in the back in the corner there. I want to draw your attention to a 1952 Jaguar C-Type, number 41 in the back. For me, it's a very special, inspirational car. It was driven victoriously by my friend and the gentleman driver and America's first Formula One champion, Phil Hill, which is also a reminder for us that people with Parkinson's can do great things. And because Phil was so inspirational in everything that he did before he passed away, he also touched the lives of many people in the automotive world. And one of those people happens to be Kelly Telfer, who's an automotive fine artist who decided to help us, and his painting is selling up front in the silent auction of that car and of Phil's great achievements in the automotive motorsports world. So now, let's get this party started, and let me start introducing who we've got with us tonight. We've got lovely and empowered women that we've brought along to chat with you. And whether it's music in motion, it's amazing how much all these ladies have in common. First of all, they're all my friends, so that's the first part of it. And though each one comes from an iconic legacy of sorts, they're leading their own charge in each of their own passions. Let's start with Rashida Ali, author, speaker, and global advocate for stem cell research in Parkinson's disease. Her father was the greatest, but she's making amazing strides to keep his legacy alive, and she's thriving. Rashida, come on up.
PC is like, or just turn on the mics. Do it anyone you like.
From five-time Rebel Rally racer and motorsport extraordinaire, Shelby Hall is a woman who's empowered both on and off-road. Her grandfather, Rod Hall, was a titan and pioneer in the off-road community, having raced the Baja 1000 over 50 years in a row, and his final time at the age of 80 while he was living with Parkinson's. And our humble Shelby simply tells us she grew up with him, playing in the dirt. Take a peek at this.
Sure.
She's a Reno native and a family gal who even took her mother on her last competition in Prims, Nevada last weekend. Come on up, Shelby.
They're scary.
Our first two guests allowed us to focus on the motion part of the evening, because that's actually mobility, and that's what ties us to Parkinson's. But our final panelist, hails from the true icon who exemplifies the literal meaning of music in motion. Dr. Deanna Brown Thomas has music in her bones and her heart, not only going on tour and learning her lessons from her dad, the godfather of soul, James Brown. She went on to share her love with music as a radio DJ for more than 20 years and as the head of the James Brown Foundation. She also teaches music and provides scholarships to all types of students from kindergarten through high school, each year working year-round. And she gives them all new passions to which to aspire through the James Brown Foundation School of Music. Come on, Deanna, say it loud. Get up here. Are you caught? Use the stairs, please. Thank you, dear. And last but not least, we have our moderator tonight, the gracious former Miss America and soon-to-be diva Miranda Priestley on stage. She's a car chick, a mother of four, and the hardest-working woman of influence I know. From Broadway to Emmys, Golden Globes, Grammys, she's always on the fly. She's my dear friend, Vanessa Williams.
Okay.
Thank you, Deb. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is a female panel. Yeah.
It's a man's world, but it wouldn't be nothing
That's right.
without. Amen.
So I love the fact that we are all women up here, but I love the fact that we all love cars so much. And cars have such memories in your life. Before I get into everything, can you tell me, Deanna, the first memory you have of the car that you remember the first, what it was like, what made you feel the way you needed to feel, and just give us a little story about how you fell in love with cars.
Okay, so my dad was a huge car enthusiast, and this man had so many cars. In the garage, outside the garage, at the horse stables, at the top of the hill, at the bottom of the hill. My dad loved cars, and so me and Vanessa Williams, we met at a celebrity antique car event at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, and we had submitted my father's 1941 Lincoln Continental. Yeah, he was really deep into it. But to be honest with you, I mean, like I said, he had Bentley, he had the Rolls Royce, he had those top cars like that. But my favorite car of Dad's to have fun with him literally was a dune buggy. We used to get in the dune buggy and just ride around in the woods and just, do that kind of stuff. That was fun to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shelby.
Well, so my family, they didn't have a ton of vehicles parked all over the place. They had race cars, and so we only got to drive the race cars when we were out in the dirt. So we spent a lot of time in the dirt. But I mean, I think one of my earliest memories is, I learned how to drive sitting on my papa's lap. I was too small to be able to reach the pedals. I mean, I'm still pretty short, but thankfully today I can reach the pedals and the steering wheel. And so I was probably, I don't know, Mom could help me. I was probably 6, 7, 8. And I was driving an H1 Hummer.
What?
That was the vehicle I learned how to drive in. And I can't believe he let me drive that thing at 8 years old, sitting on his lap. And, I never felt scared. I felt like he was such a great coach. He was coaching me on where to steer while he was managing the pedals. And that's a memory that I will have forever. I have a picture of me sitting on my papa's lap right next to my bed. So I see that every morning and every night.
Amazing. Rashida?
Hi, thank you. That was nice. Thank you, Shelby. First, I want to thank all of you guys for being here because it really means the world to see all of these recipients out supporting Parkinson's and trying to donate money and awareness. So thank all of you and my panel and Vanessa for just all your love and passion for Parkinson's. And so thank you all, really. And thank you, Debbie, for bringing us all together and for your love and passion for Parkinson's. And anyway, I can go on and on about how much we love to help those who are in need. But my dad was also an enthusiast, like James Brown. He loved cars, and my dad's first car, I believe it was 1963 Cadillac convertible, and it was red, and he was always in it because he was like, that was his dream car. And I remember him giving, I don't remember, but I was told, because I wasn't born yet. But in 1950, he gave Mama Bird, my grandmother, Mama Bird, a 1959 pink Cadillac. And I know once he, came back from the Olympics and stuff, he wanted to buy his mother a car. And that was something that was really special for him. And they were in Louisville. And Mama Bird was just so proud of her son, who had just, become, an Olympian. So she was excited about that. My dad has had throughout the years many cars. My dad was a Rolls Royce enthusiast. So he's had the 1970, it was a convertible Rolls Royce Silver Star. Did I say that right? Silver Cloud? Silver Shadow. Thank you, Deb. Thank you. It was in that satellite world. But yeah, it was a 1970 Silver Shadow, and he had that. He drove it for like 6 years, and before he gave it away. But that particular car resonates and means something because he bought that car while he used the name Cassius Clay to buy that car. Now I don't know why, but he used Cassius Clay. He bought it in New Jersey, and we actually lived at that time in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So he bought it in New Jersey, and he drove it up to his training camp, which is what they call Fighter's Heaven now, in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania. And he would always drive it around the camp, and he had a mosque that he built on the property, and he would, again, drive it around that. And he was so in love with the car, he ended up buying a 1977 Camel, it was dual color, Camel Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible. And that car gives me chills because my dad, when he lived in the Hancock Park area of Los Angeles, you're familiar with that because all those who live in LA.
Old Hollywood. Old Hollywood section.
Exactly. So my dad lived in Fremont Place, I think you've gone there, haven't you?
My sister-in-law lives over there.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So my dad lived in Fremont Place, and he had this 1977 convertible Corniche Rolls Royce, and he would, we would visit him in the summer, and he would put all of his kids in the car, and he would drive down Wilshire Boulevard with all of his kids and just brag about, how pretty we were. Because with Daddy,
It was pretty.
because he was
Your
pretty.
dad was pretty.
So Daddy was everything was looks, and so he would say, "Let's just take a ride." So we'd all jump in the car. It was 1981. There was a picture. Deb knows. I showed her. Okay, 1981. I'm not gonna show my age, but I'm gonna just tell you, I was 11.
Okay.
And we were all packed in the car, and it was so like we weren't even wearing seatbelts. Some kids were sitting on top of our lap. But Daddy would drive us down Wilshire Boulevard so proud as a father and just taking us around. And we'd just go to 7-Eleven and get Slurpees and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just the proud look on his face having all his kids and God. Those were the best memories. And I remember the smell of the leather seats. Like when you smell leather, it takes me back to that car when I was sitting there with Daddy and all of us. And we were just kids, but it just certain smells just brings back memories. And he loved that car so much. And when Parkinson's became more progressive, he couldn't drive anymore. He was devastated because he loved that car. And that was his favorite, Rolls Royce that he drove. So he kept it. He sold the other cars because, he didn't really hang on to stuff. But he kept that. And it was, when he moved to Michigan, it was sitting in his barn garage. And one time he snuck out, and Lonnie was like, "Mommy, you can't drive that car." And he snuck out and just drove just to the gas station because he just wanted to ride it again. And so now, to this day, that's the only car he kept. That car is sitting in the showroom of the Muhammad Ali Center at his museum in Louisville, Kentucky. And he wanted to keep that because for him it brought good memories. And when I go to the Ali Center, you guys should go take a look. It's a really good center. Yeah. You'll see it sitting in the showroom, and it just, again, when I see it, it just brings back, again, those childhood memories of when Daddy would take us out in the summer on drives.
Great memories.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, Shelby, you mentioned driving at a young age, and my mother is here as well. My mother actually let me we had a Fiat 128 when I was 14 years old, and she let me drive because we all had to drive sticks because we lived in New York, and there's snow, and my dad said we had to drive a stick because that's better in the snow. So I grew up driving a stick, and my mom took me to Gedney Park, which had a kind of a dirt road in the back, and she pulled over and said, "You can drive." So she was my first sneak driving instructor. But I remember my mom had a Mustang. My dad bought my mom a Mustang 66, beautiful metallic blue convertible. You had a Rambler, a beautiful yellow Rambler before that, which was great. We had a couple of Fiats, 128 and 131. And when I was in high school, I got the old Audi 100 LS that was passed down while my mom drove the 5000. And my senior year in high school, my dad had a Lancia Beta Coupe, and he allowed me to take that to school. And that was beautiful pale yellow, chocolate brown leather, air horn. So I pulled up to my high school thinking I was the shit. And that's, obviously started I think it's in your bones though, because my 2-year-old grandson, as soon as he drives up in my driveway, he goes, that means the garage up, and then he goes right to the golf cart and gets on the steering wheel and then I've got a blue Maserati. I said, blue car, pops up the door open, gets in, and then gets out, goes to the other side, pops the door open, gets in, and he can feel the tires and wants to pop the trunk, get in my truck. I mean, and he's 2. I didn't teach him that. You know what I mean? So he's got it in his bones. So I think all the car enthusiasts out there, you can see the lineage of just how passionate you can be about speed, but how beautiful the curves are and the memories of your family and where you were the first time you were in a specific car. Let me get my glasses on. Sorry. My God. I don't have sorry, Deb. It happens to, yes. 41 years, good Lord, I know. Speaking of which, you mentioned your dad. Is there the picture of me as Miss America with, did it went through the cycle? So that was the first time
I want to see that.
Yep. Yes. Okay. So when I won Miss America, I had a photo session the next day on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, and Muhammad Ali happened to be there. I don't know what he was doing in town, and I have a beautiful picture of me, and of course he's like, pretend I'm punching you, so I'm going like this, of course. But it was amazing. So being part of such an iconic family, which you all are, is there pressure, do you feel? And we're not getting into the Parkinson's yet, but growing up with that legacy, and I want to start with Diana, is there pressure? Obviously, everyone knows your father and his legacy, and you're in music. Did you feel pressure growing up trying to follow in his footsteps, or knowing that everybody knew who you were?
Definitely. I traveled on the road with my father after, I went to college and did all of that. And I traveled around the world with my dad. I had to do his hair.
Ah, you're kidding.
But, if you knew my dad, it was important. His hair, his teeth, and his feet. He kept all of those things in good health for a reason. So I traveled around the world with him, so I got a chance to really learn and to know him. And I think the pressure really came from him because my dad was strict, but he wanted me to understand this business. He didn't want to just throw me out there because he was like, they'll eat you alive out there, they eat you alive. And certainly in the world that we live in, you can get ate alive if you don't understand what you're doing. So and my father wasn't well educated. He went as far as the 7th grade because my grandparents were poor coming up in the segregated South. And he had to go to work on the cotton fields or do whatever he had to do to bring home a few pennies. So here's a man who had a business acumen out of this world, but no education. Here's a man who is the most sampled artist in hip hop, who just celebrated 50 years, still to this day, still going to 7th grade. But education was important. That's what he made us go to school. He made us go and get that education. So the pressure, I think, came from him because he wanted more for us than he had for himself. And he always said, yeah, it's made up for you. You got a way out. It's already worked out for you. You ain't gonna come up like me. And he was right. I didn't understand how he came up. He came up very poor. I wasn't born into that. But what he did do is he made sure that I understood that it's important for a person like me in the position that I'm in to pay it forward. Therefore, after he passed, I started the James Brown Family Foundation and the James Brown Academy of Music Pupils, where we're teaching kids how to play instruments, and we've been doing that for 13 years. Yeah.
Well, you opened it up because both my parents were music educators. How do you feel about music not being in schools?
I can tell you there's 2 reasons why we got so many problems with kids in school. Number 1, they took prayer out, and number 2, they ain't funding music and arts like they should. My dad said you put an instrument in a child's hand, you'll change that child's life, and I've literally seen that over these last 13 years with these young kids. It changed his life, so certainly it can change others.
Great, thank you for that, because that's very important. So Shelby, as a racer, Have you had any close calls, and do you have any stories about them? Is there a fear factor, because it's thrilling, but it's also very dangerous?
Well, I have crashed a couple times. I myself have laid vehicles on their sides. I've never fully gone over in the driver's seat, so I don't think that counts as a roll, just clarifying that. I have rolled in a UTV. I was the co-driver, so I was navigating. And it's always the navigator's fault. Whatever happens, if it's bad, it's the navigator's fault. If you win, it's the driver's fault. So, so that roll was definitely my fault, even though I was not in control. But, the thing is like these race vehicles are built to crash. They are safer than your vehicles that you're driving down the street. So, and we wear lots of safety equipment. We've got 5-point harnesses. We're in fire suits, full face helmets. So, there's always that risk, but that's part of the adrenaline, that's part of the fun. For me, I love desert driving. And one of the terrains that was the newest to me is dune driving. So for those who are from the Reno area, we have Sand Mountain, and that's about the only area that you can go to get your feet in some sand. And so I started driving out in Sand Mountain to learn how to drive in the dunes. I now live in Southern California, and I'm relatively close to an area called Glamis, or the Imperial Sand Dunes, which is the largest sand dune complex in North America. And so I spend a lot of time out there to, I want to be able to drive in the sand like it's second nature. I remember being so nervous when I would have to compete in the sand and in the dunes, and that's my favorite place to drive now.
Wow, very wow.
Yes.
I know, Rashida, we were talking before this evening about Parkinson's and about your dad's later fights and seeing the signs. Can you kind of recap a little bit of that story? Because it's reality. You clocked it early and didn't know what it was. And can you just kind of, since we're talking about Parkinson's and your dad is the ambassador for fighting and being courageous, can you tell them about that time period and your observations?
Yeah, sure. So my dad was, at that point, he was diagnosed in '84, but at that time, he had gone, his first symptom was the tremors on his thumb. And so my dad was we were saying my dad was in the ring too long, but my dad didn't think. He just was like, I love boxing. And so he just kept going.
And he was the greatest, so why not? Why stop?
And he loved it. But people don't realize is that even before he was a professional, he had over 100 amateur fights. So when you think about people who are boxers and you're following boxing, and the great boxers are ones who have a long career as an amateur. But when you're looking at someone who's had over 100 amateur fights, they're already have taken a lot of damage even before they turned pro. That was my dad. My dad started boxing when he was 12 years old. And he had a long amateur career long before he went into the Olympics. So when you look at his fighting history, he's taken a lot of beatings throughout the years. And back then, they didn't have systems in place then as they do now, where, if you got a concussion, okay, well, we're going to take 2 months off. They didn't do that back then. They're just like, okay, back in the saddle, let's do another fight. My dad would fight 3, 4, 5 times in a month, which is unheard of. And he loved boxing. But then he had a lot of people in his camp that wanted him to fight because then that's how they got paid. So anyway, it was politics around that. But when he was diagnosed, of course, I was telling Vanessa earlier, he wasn't diagnosed till '84, but I saw signs, when I saw the 1978 fight against Leon Spinks, I already saw Parkinson's. And then, of course, that's because, and I'm not really well informed about Parkinson's, but just in my limited knowledge, me being an advisory board member on a biotech company, learning. And I told you, I don't know everything, but I ask a lot of questions. So I do know people who are movement disorder specialists. I know, friends who are neurologists, and I ask a lot of questions, especially when I was spending time with my dad. I would go with him to doctor appointments and I would ask. And then, of course, I was a care partner, which we all know. We have a caregiver who is usually a significant other or a wife or a husband, but then they have to have a team of people that helps them. And I was kind of a team member who would kind of help my stepmom out if she was going to the store, because we never left him alone. I would be like, Lonnie would say, hey, he wants to stay, me. And I would jump at the opportunity, because being with my dad was like, it was gold, because it was gold. Am I right or wrong? The time we spent together, and I'm so happy that I took advantage of that, because I spent quality time. But when I look, and we looked at his old fights, my dad would sit down and he had his list of stuff he liked, and the first thing he'd love to watch was himself, of course. So that was his favorite subject. And then the second favorite subject was Elvis. So if he would watch himself, and then, he'd look at me like I was watching TV, and he'd say, I was a bad man, wasn't he? And I says, Daddy, you still are. What are you talking about? And then he'd put on Elvis and whatever. But when I watched the 1978 fight against Leon Spinks, I already saw a shuffle walk. I saw before, the weigh-in and stuff, I heard the slurred speech. So, and that's me knowing Parkinson's. He had it back in 78, in my opinion. And it lingered and it lingered. And back then, my dad, when he had the tremors, he would go to doctors and they would say, oh, you're too young to have Parkinson's. You're just punch drunk. And they would send him away for years and years and years. And finally, in 1984, he was correctly diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome. And he wasn't even diagnosed with Parkinson's disease until years later, probably 10 years later. So he had syndrome in 84, and he was only 42 at the time. So he was a young Parkinsonian, young onset. But just think about how many years that he spent without being on levodopa.
Yeah.
And all those years that he sat dormant without taking medication. So we already know that earlier that you're diagnosed, it'll slow or even stop the progression at a point, the sooner you're diagnosed. And so my dad, he didn't know, and we didn't know either. But of course, once he was diagnosed, he was already 4 years into Parkinson's syndrome, as it's called. Without having taken that medication, it could have kind of helped if he at least known a little bit sooner.
You mentioned stem cells.
Yes.
That's the future?
I know it's the future.
Okay.
And I say that with huge confidence.
Huh?
I want to say that that's going to be our cure. I do know a little bit about stem cells and the controversial topic about stem cells in the beginning, and how I wasn't getting funding because it was from an embryonic nature. I understand that. But in my limited work with a biotech company who was using autologous stem cells, faced less rejection, and hence had the opportunity of getting more of the testing done and the funding done, because it was autologous and it wasn't not only controversial, but it had less rejection involved. So I think, delving into that world, and that's why we're here tonight, is being able to put funds back behind R&D, research and development, for the stem cell biotech companies who are going to, I think, lead the way to find a cure. I do think it's going to happen. I hope it's my lifetime. I want it to be my dad's. But, again, we're hopeful. I do really think that it's going to be autologous stem cells that's going to bring us to that cure that we're so desire. But that's really why we need the money, we need the funds, we need the wherewithal to be able to put money into where it's needed, and that's the research and development for stem cell research, autologous, because I think that's going to lead us closer to the cure that we're looking for.
Fantastic.
My grandfather had stem cell treatments done. And, of course, he had to travel out of the country to have it done. And that was very hard to do. He was already diagnosed and pretty debilitated.
Sure.
Which was such a struggle because, like you said, he had to bring a team with him to wheel him around. And he was in Mexico, and so even wheeling down the sidewalks of Mexico is not the same as, flat here. And we don't, it's so hard to say we know it helped, but to what degree, it's so hard to know, but I know he immediately felt so much better. So we were very, we were blessed to be able to have that opportunity.
Fantastic. Deanna, I know that you were very close to your dad. When you lose such an iconic person and your career is involved with music and you've got that connection always, how does that make you feel? Because I know he was larger than life. And, we mentioned his car collection and the impact that he made worldwide. But you individually, how did that make you feel to lose your father?
Well, to the world, of course, he was the godfather of Soul James Brown and bringing you songs like I Feel Good and It's a Man's World and Living in America and Please, Please, Please and all these great songs. But to me, he was just daddy. And education was very important. He wasn't afforded that opportunity to go past the 7th grade, so he was very much go to school. And I learned a lot from my father. I was thrust into a situation to have to start handling business that I thought I couldn't handle, but didn't realize when he was training me that he was training me. When I was going around the world with him and doing things with him, he was training me, and I didn't realize it at that time. So when my father began to get ill, it was like you, Rashida. I saw it. I saw early on. He didn't have Parkinson's. He passed away of congested heart failure. And even though that's a whole nother story, just October 1st, 2020, I had that situation. Oh my gosh. I almost died.
Oh no.
My heart was functioning at 10%. Oh my God. But I will tell you this, I am doing much better now.
Yes.
God is good. But I've changed my diet, and all of that has a lot to do with everything that we have issues with in our health, no matter what it is. My father didn't have a great diet. He'd come off the stage and, he wanted to eat a steak and fried this and fried that and coconut cake and a couple beers and stay up 2-3 hours. Well, he had to come down.
Yeah.
After doing that work, staying on that stage, doing them shows, it took him another hour or two to come down after, of course, he had his hair done. That's important. But I changed my diet, and I'm just so thankful that I went through that, but I learned from that, how important it is to take care of yourself. And like I said, I watched my dad did not take care of himself. So when I had my situation, I realized that it is so important how we must be careful with our diets. Our diets are the key to so many things that a lot of these diseases bring on. So, but just staying involved, working with kids and doing what I'm doing now has just been a great help as well. And coming out and being a part of events like this. These are the things that my father wanted me to be a part of, to make sure you can do positive things in the world. He didn't come from that type of stuff, but he taught us that. So I'm just thankful to be able to go around and talk about his life and to use it to help others and to bring forth awareness for situations like this for Parkinson's.
What do you think he would have thought of his movie?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, my dad.
Has anyone seen the James Brown movie? I mean, what do you?
You mean the one that Chadwick Boseman?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, Chadwick Boseman was awesome. He was fantastic in the movie. He was fantastic in the movie, and we lost a giant in the acting world as a young man, only 42 years old, playing Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, the Black Panther. I mean, come on now. But I believe that my father would be proud of the young people who were part of that. But I can tell you, if we were to sit down, and you know, it's a lot of dramatic stuff. You understand the whole Hollywood thing, Vanessa. But if we were to sit there, we would have still been watching the movie, all of the stuff that was in his lifetime that we could have talked about. But you know, being here with Rashida, you know, because my dad and Muhammad Ali were such good friends. They went all the way to Africa and did a show together. They did so many things together. So it's like we get to come back around in the next generation and do things with the different people, you know, to just like they did. I just think this is awesome stuff. This is history to me.
Yeah.
So Deb, thank you. You know, kudos to you, Deb, and to Mindy, and to the museum, and to everybody who put their selves together, come together to do things like this. Thank you.
Of course, I have to ask, do you think your father thinks that Will Smith was beautiful enough to play him, or what? Because he wasn't as funny as your daddy.
Okay, so beauty, no way. Okay, but Will did call my dad's house several times because he was in character. And he sounded a lot. My dad was impressed with Will's performance. He was impressed with Will, sounded just like him. My opinion, I'm not going to talk for my dad. My opinion, no one can duplicate my dad. And it's just because I'm biased and it's my dad. So no one can be as beautiful as him. As cute, you know what I mean? It's you know, let's just, no one's as pretty as him. No one's as charming as him. And when he walked into a room, it's just, it was, I can't explain it. It's a spiritual aura. It's a presence that you can't duplicate. However, I thought Will did very well. I thought he sounded like my dad, and my dad gave him the okay, the thumbs up.
Okay.
So he was happy with Will's performance, that for sure. So yeah, I will say that he was happy with his performance.
So you mentioned your grandfather raced while he had Parkinson's. How difficult do you think it was for him, and did he mention any kind of, obviously, physical disabilities in terms of what affected him while he was racing?
So, I mean, very similar. We started seeing these early symptoms, and we didn't know what it was. You know, we didn't really talk about it either. You know, he was the man of our family, and so it was challenging to say something's not right. He really started losing his balance, and he was falling. And it was just kind of random times. You know, there wasn't something that would make sense. Oh, that tripped him. So, you know, he definitely continued working. He was still kicking rocks, playing in the dirt, doing, you know, his life. And it did come to a point when he became wheelchair bound. And so some of the photos that have popped up, there's an old Bronco, and it's a 1968 Bronco, and that thing actually sat in this museum for many years. Now it sits in my garage, and we still drive it. But in 2015, I didn't think he would ever leave. You know, I didn't put a lot, I was young then, and he was my best friend. And so in 2015, I said, Papa, That Bronco should not be sitting in a museum. How boring. Let's restore that thing and let's take it down to Baja. Let's go race it. Because that truck is actually the only four-wheel drive vehicle that has ever won the Baja 1000 overall.
Wow.
Still, and that was in 1969. Yeah. And he said yes. So we restored that Bronco. And so race trucks don't have opening doors. You have to climb in them. And, that was not possible for him to climb up into that Bronco. And so we had our crew pick him up and slip him into the driver's seat. I don't know if we should have let him drive, but it was what it was what made him so happy.
Yeah.
And man, he drove that thing like a bat out of hell. I rode with him. And he still had it, man. He still had it. We didn't let him drive on the street, but he got to drive in the dirt. But what was so cool about that Bronco, and I mean that thing means the world to me, is it was the last vehicle that he was able to drive. He continued to race, but he had to co-drive. So that Bronco is very special, and it lives in my garage. Everybody thinks it's crazy that and that I still take it off road. And one of these days we might race it again. It means a lot to me now, and I get a little bit nervous of taking it off road. People nerf you and stuff happens. But yeah, that he still had it.
So there are so many stories yet to tell up on here, and I know that there might be some questions out in the audience that people might want to ask. Is there any question that anyone wants to know? Anything? Very shy. Yes?
I offered a chance to teach at college poetry or something.
Yes,
So was your dad offered to teach poetry at a college?
Yeah, so I think you are right. I don't know what college did offer him a position. My dad was obviously, when his title was stripped, he was forced to speak at colleges, and in the beginning he was pretty terrible. I mean, Daddy was a poet, but to be a speaker in a college platform, I mean, that's a skill that people go to school for that. I mean, they practice. And so in the beginning, my dad was horrible. And then he just kind of got the hang of it, and he just started writing poems. And then, of course, he had a great story to tell about the conscientious objector and how he decided that he didn't want to fight and it was against his religion. So then when the topics became about his life and his convictions, then it just became a lot easier for him to just talk about why he did certain things. And then he kind of, he coupled whatever conversation he had with a poem. And then he just started making people laugh. But I think he turned down that college professor because I don't think Daddy really wanted that job. I think he just really wanted to get back in the ring and fight. And fortunately, in 1970, in December 1970, he had the opportunity. His license was then given back to him, and then he got a chance to do what he really loved to do. The main thing was he didn't feel Joe Frazier deserved to be champion because he didn't really win the right way because my dad was not really working at the time. So his goal was to get back and say, I need to beat Joe Frazier, because Joe doesn't really deserve to be champion because I wasn't really in the game at the time.
Yeah, okay.
So I got to beat Joe Frazier. That was his goal, and he did so.
Amazing. Any other questions? Not a one. What? Yes, in the back?
To be in the White House of the 90s, so for one.
Oh my God. Can I tell you something? Listen. When my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's, we were talking to Vanessa earlier.
Yeah.
He was shy about not being able to speak. One of his symptoms is slurred speech. And now we all do know that we're not going to find any two Parkinsonian patient the same. Everyone's not going to have the same progression everyone's not going to take the same medications. Everyone's not going to have the same symptoms. My dad's symptom was slurred speech, which he hated because they called him a Louisville lip, and he loved to talk. So when he was diagnosed, and we were talking earlier, is that once he was able to, what was the word, accept the fact that he couldn't do what he used to be able to do, he kind of disappeared for a while, and Michael J. Fox gave him the courage to get out there and show his face and use his name anew, because Daddy disappeared for a minute because he was vain. We talked about that. He was pretty, and he didn't want anyone to mess up his face, and masked face will kind of disfigure your face a little bit. He didn't like that, and he didn't like the fact that he kind of whispered. But Michael gave him the courage to get out in front of Congress, start to change laws for people who have Parkinson's and other movement disorders. 1996, that was when he came out after 10 years being in the background. He almost said no. When the Olympic Committee invited him to come and light the cauldron, my dad at first said no. Why did he say no? He said, I don't want to shake. I understand that. I'm vain too. But I understand as a fighter and a beautiful man who not one camera didn't love him, I understand him not want to get up there and show people this is the new me. I get that. But somebody told him, Muhammad, do you know how many people you could help if you go out there on a global stage and show them that you have Parkinson's, but you can still do great things? And then that's what made him say, I'll do it. In 1996, there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. Everybody remembers him and the torch. Everybody remembers him.
That was such a beautiful moment in history. People were crying not because they felt sorry, but they felt he earned it.
Yeah.
He deserved that. He earned it. He paid his dues. But he also showed people in the Parkinson's community that you can be great too.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He really did. He made a presence in everyone's lives, not just people with Parkinson's, but people who have other conditions that had issues with themselves. That was a brave move.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Very brave.
Lady in the pale pink, yes?
No, I just wanted to touch on what you just said. My mother suffered from Parkinson's, and my parents both loved your father and followed him since he was Cassius Clay all through his career.
Thank you.
I remember the night of the Olympics. My mom was sitting on the couch, and when he walked out to light the flag, tears just rolled down her eyes because they had that common bond, and she always loved him so much. So.
You know why she was crying? I'm going to assume he was standing up for people like her. He was their voice when they didn't have one. He was their platform, and that's what he did to people. Thank you.
Yes, over here.
Yes, good evening. I'd like you to comment on, if you can, you said something about stem cell therapy in relation to Parkinson's, and the latest cancer therapy is to do with telomerase. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. Again, I'm limited, but autologous is, and most of us know what that means, is basically when you're taking stem cells from your own bone marrow. And I do know, and you talked about the heart condition that your dad had and stuff. I've been hearing that stem cell therapy can help people who have heart conditions, congestive heart failure, people who have diabetes, people who have other ailments outside of movement disorders and Parkinson's. It also can help people who have had spinal cord injuries that have left them wheelchair bound. So I'm not surprised that it also can do wonders for people who have cancer. So, and that's why I said that stem cell therapy is going to be our future, not just for people with Parkinson's and movement disorders, but also other ailments. And unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the cancer part, but I do believe there's hope in that department.
Telomeres are a step beyond stem cells, okay? telomeres and telomerase are very active in every single cell in every animal.
Okay.
And when the telomeres decide when the cell will reproduce, decide the quality of reproduction and pre-programmed to reproduce a given number of times. But it's the telomeres. Now, telomerase in cancerous cells is very active. It replaces the nucleotide in telomeres regularly, although telomeres are only normal length. In humans, they're a little longer, but they shorten, and that's when human cells die. The telomeres are so
Telomeres of the future.
So
That's fantastic.
the latest in cancer therapy to attack, they're trying to attack telomerase in cancerous cells. It's very active in cancerous cells, and that's why cancer cells are immune.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. Thank you so much.
I'm looking for a relation to Parkinson's.
I feel good. That's right. Let's hear it for our ladies. Tonight, some of the things we talked about when we first started with these lovely women was the commonality that women face. When I decided that we should do a program in Reno, it started, again, because of women. One of my best friends used to live here, and she knew several people that happen to be in this audience right now, including Mindy Lokshin, Dr. Mindy Lokshin. And when she said to me, Deb, you got to go up to Reno. You're doing stuff all over the country, but you haven't done anything in my old hometown. And I said, well, what's there? and then a friend of mine said, well, you got to meet Phil. I mean, he's got this great museum. You got to find out. You've got Cars and Camaraderie going. Let's put this together. And I said, well, first let me talk to Mindy. And the first part of that kindred spirit for me was the fact of her name, because my own mother was named Mindy. And when that happened, and I had lost her to Parkinson's, I knew that there was a reason I had to come to Reno. So that's the first thing. And I want to bring Dr. Mindy Lokshin up here because she's a woman with a vision. She started 3 years ago when there really wasn't much of a Parkinson's support center up here. And she had a vision of helping those 5,000 and more people that are in this area. And Mindy, I can't thank you enough for all of your encouragement and what you do. And without her, 9/10 of the people here probably wouldn't be here tonight, because she seems to know everybody in Reno. Thank you.
Okay. Boy, how do you beat that? I mean, these women are pretty phenomenal, and it's because of Deb. I mean, this is her show. This is a Drive Toward a Cure event, which is phenomenal. I've got to say thank you to Deb, to Carol, to Mark, to Samantha, to Vikas, to Derek, and whoever else is affiliated with Drive Toward a Cure who chose to drive here, even from Idaho, from California, from all over the country. We're really, really honored to have you here. We're thrilled to have worked with Phil and Meg and Emily and all the amazing crew here at the museum, and thrilled to have this fabulous role model group of panelists who have really inspired us and pulled together what a lot of people said to me: cars, music, Parkinson's? Yeah, there is obviously an incredibly strong connection with the car community, wanting to support those who maybe need a car to move and aren't able to move as well themselves. Our Parkinson's Support Center is just 3 years young. We are on the threshold of just tremendous growth because we're the only game in town helping people with Parkinson's with support services, education programming, and advocacy. And we're just really thrilled to be able to fill that void and serve our friends, our family, and our community. I hope you bid well on our silent auction items outside, so our next step is a big step for mankind here. We've got till 8:30, so as soon as we wrap up our little conversation here, please take a look and see if there's something that really tempts you. We worked hard to pull together a really amazing collection and a range of items to tempt you. But I just want to thank you all for being here and for the support. Thank you.